There are many arguments used by scholars for the existence of Jesus, but barely any is not problematic when we shine a light of scrutiny on them. Today we can look at most of Paul's writings, except Galatians 1:19. Welcome to Mindless Musings. Don't forget to like and subscribe so we can keep on the good work. Now, the consensus among New Testament scholars is that only Paul can be verified as the writer of any letters in the New Testament, so only his works are authentic. This means historians cannot validate any of the other letters as reliable to use for historical purposes. The claimed writers cannot be verified as the actual writers, so it is much harder to place the content of their writings, intention and sometimes timeline squarely in history. Now, of the 13 epistles of Paul, only 6 or 7 are genuine or authentic Pauline letters. The others cannot be verified and or seen as probable forgeries. The 7 authentic letters of Paul are Romans, 1 and 2 Corinthians, Galatians, Philippians, 1 Thessalonians, and Philemon. We will be examining only these 7 letters for this argument. Paul's letters are the earliest Christian writings we have to date. They are dated 50 to 60 AD. This is impressively close to the assumed crucifixion/resurrection period. So, they are gold dust for historians. So, when you watch this video, remember that as at this time, the Gospels did not exist. This is the first anyone will read of Jesus anywhere. Now, Paul never ever situates Jesus on this earth in everything he wrote in these 7 letters. This is shocking to hear, I know. However, all Paul's references to Jesus were either vague, generic, and do not help actually identify him as a person on earth and in time. Take some time to let that sink in. Paul is writing to his churches and preaching, and he never once uses a quote from Jesus whilst on earth, a parable, an example from his life, or point to anything about him on earth as a person in history. This is unusually bizarre. On the contrary, Paul only mentions Jesus as interacting with him via revelation, as a spiritual being. For instance, passages like Galatians 4:4, Jesus was born of a woman. Is this literal or allegorical? Where? When? What woman? And, in Galatians 4:14, Paul goes on to call Jesus an angel of God. Some Bible translations show Paul refers to Jesus as a descendant of David. The actual original Greek translates as manufactured of the sperm of David. This is the same term the Greek would use to indicate something crafted. Again, this is vague and does not give anything concrete to make him historical. He says Jesus is a Jew. But of course, if Jesus is a Jewish deity and manufactured of the sperm of David, then he is a Jew. But then again, this does not place him in time and on earth. 1 Corinthians 15:3-8 is pivotal. Paul says he received a message or tradition, not specifying where from. Christ died for our sins, was buried, and rose again. Again, we don't have any identifying details to place this in history and on earth. This is just a string of words. Even more interesting, the later verses say, Christ appeared to the apostles and several others. This is the first time we see Christ having contact with other humans, but it was after he had died. He was appearing as a non-human. There is nothing in Paul to situate him on earth or having contact with people before he died, and we don't know anything about his death. Remember, the Gospels don't exist as yet. So clear your mind of all you already know. Imagine you are reading Paul with no knowledge of Jesus whatsoever. Paul mentions that Jesus was handed over a few times, but he says either God did it, or Jesus handed himself over, or simply handed over, and doesn't mention anyone else. Example is 1 Corinthians 11:23. Some translations may put Judas in here. These are later additions or forgeries to make the text fit. Then there is 1 Thessalonians 2:14-16, where Paul allegedly writes that the Jews killed Jesus. These verses have also been debunked by most scholars as a forgery or an interpolation by Christians later. Those passages point to a period after the Second Jewish War, when Paul would have been dead. Paul always encountered Jesus via revelation and received messages from him. 1 Corinthians 11:23 is an example. All through Paul's writings, Jesus is never situated in human time with any corroborating detail. There is no feature by Paul of Jesus ever speaking to anyone as a human on earth in a particular place and time. This is bizarre, for a man writing so close to the time period of the supposed death of Jesus, and who definitely met eyewitnesses, by his own attestation, if we go by 1 Corinthians 15. In the next video, we will examine Galatians 1:19. Thanks and bye for now.